Welcome everyone to this special Italian wine class. My name is Tony Margiotta, and I'll be guiding you through a fresh perspective on Italian wines for the fall that I know you're going to enjoy. Now, if you haven't yet, make sure you've subscribed to Gladiator Wine TV so you don't miss on any future wine videos. So in the ancient world, the Greeks called the Italian peninsula Enothria, which means land of wine. And that's because wine grapes grow and flourish in Italy better than anywhere else on the planet. There's more biodiversity in Italy than anywhere else on the planet. That's why Italy has hundreds, if not thousands, of its own native grape varieties that create wines with unique flavors, textures, and aromas. Italy has more buried treasures in terms of wines than you'll find anywhere else. And today, we'll be exploring 4 wines that aren't made anywhere else in the world but Italy. But there's more. We're now in the fall season, and it's an important time for vineyards across Italy because it's harvest time. When it comes to grape harvesting, most people think Grandpa is in the vineyard picking the grapes to make the wine in your glass. Nothing could be further from the truth. There are actually 2 different ways to do a harvest, and you're looking at the first one in this picture. What you're looking at is a machine doing the harvest. This machine is picking everything at the same time. It's picking the ripe grapes, but it's also picking the rotten grapes, the unripe grapes, the sour grapes, the lower quality grapes, the higher quality grapes, and everything in between. And then they take it back to the wine cellar, mix it together, throw in some additives to make it taste good, and all of a sudden you've got sort of a Coca-Cola version of a wine. Now, here's the second way of harvesting. This is harvesting by hand. The advantage to harvesting by hand is you pick the best clusters of grapes and only use those for winemaking. You also have the advantage of picking each cluster at the perfect moment of maturity. One area of grapes might be ready today, but another area might be ready tomorrow, for example. When you do it this way, you're only using high quality grapes to make the wine, and you don't need all the additives that are found in the mass-produced wines. What you're getting is an authentic, cleaner wine whose deliciousness comes from the work done in the vineyard and not in the wine cellar. Take a look at this comparison photograph here. If you want to experience the best quality possible when it comes to wines and the most authentic possible, you have to drink what we call local artisan wines that hand harvest and hand select their best grapes at the perfect moment of maturity. Now, as you can see from the picture here, picking by hand is a lot of work, and you cannot make a lot of wine that way. That's why most real small artisanal producers make somewhere around 50,000 bottles a year per label. Okay, that's not a lot of wine when you compare to what the mass producers can do when they're machine harvesting. They can make millions and millions of bottles per year. Okay, you got to ask yourself a question. How do you make millions of bottles of wine taste exactly the same? I mean, after all, we're talking about an agricultural product, a grape. We're not talking about a soda, right? So the wines that we're going to be tasting in this fall wine class only come from hand harvested and hand selected grapes. It's a community effort when you're doing hand harvesting. So I'd argue there's more than just delicious flavors inside a good bottle of wine. It's the people that make it possible. And I don't know about you, but I will spend the rest of my life supporting these small local winemakers whose passionate labor I admire so much. When you go into a liquor store, it would be nice to know which wines are mass produced and which wines are local artisan wines. But the truth is that it's not easy to know. There's no special label that says it. But it's always best to assume that at least 9 out of 10 bottles of wine in your local wine shops are probably coming from mass produced vineyards who have machine harvested their grapes. So basically, what I've done here is I've done all the busy work for you because I've selected 4 artisanal wines from Italy that I found during my travels. But before I get into the wines, I'd just like to share a little bit with you about who I am. For those of you who don't know me, this is a picture of me on the right along with my father, 𝐥𝐤𝐤. My father is from a small village in southern Italy in the 𝐦𝐨𝐬𝐤𝐤 region. He came from a small town called Mont'Aquila. It's about an hour and a half by car to go to Naples, for those of you who are familiar with that. And of course, that's without traffic. He came to America with my grandparents in the 1970s. Long story short, my grandmother passes away in the year 2000, and it was that year that I made my first trip to Italy. It's a very emotional reunion of family members in this village. And so on that very first trip, I fell in love with Italy. I fell in love with the culture, the food, the wine. I even got married in Italy on the island of Sardinia. That's where my wife is from. And so long story short, I've had amazing food and wine experiences all over Italy. But every time I would come back home to New York, I'd always run to my local wine shop to pick up a bottle of Italian wine. And I was always somewhat disappointed compared to the wines that I was drinking when I was in Italy. And I got curious. I was like, why is it different? Is it the ambiance? Is it the sulfites that everybody talks about? So I started buying wine books and I began studying about wine. And while I learned a lot about wine reading those books, my tasting experiences were pretty much still the same. The wines just simply weren't as good as what I could drink on my trips in Italy. And so on these trips, I'd go to just regular small local restaurants all over the peninsula, and I'd order vino della casa, the house wine. And the house wines were better, I found, than the commercial wines that I was buying at my local wine shops back in New York. $15, $20 bottles of wine were not nearly as good as the house wine served in many local Italian restaurants in Italy. So I got curious and I started asking the servers, the owners, the managers, who made this wine? It's so delicious. And they always told me this ambiguous answer. They would always say, a local producer. They never tell me who actually made the wine. So I got more curious. Well, long story short, these local producers turned out to be smaller, lesser known vineyards, but they were very well respected in their local areas in Italy and pretty much unknown outside of that. So I opened up an importing company called 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐤 to support these smaller vineyards. And that's why I'm here today. I'm a wine lover first and foremost, and I can tell you that discovering these small local vineyards has changed my life, and I could never imagine going back to drinking those mass-produced wines ever again. Many of the wines in my portfolio have won awards all over the world for their superior quality, and I even wrote this book called Hidden Gems of Italy, which is sort of part shopping guide and part crash course in Italian wine. And I basically teach you how to read Italian wine labels, even if you can't speak one word of Italian. I break it down in a very, very easy way. And I even show you sort of how to go shopping for Italian wine so that you can find the best wines for your money. So here's what we're going to cover in this fall Italian wine class. I'm going to reveal to you how to pair food and wine in the fall season. I'm going to share with you a white wine that can outlive and out-age some reds. I'm going to share with you a daring wine pairing with turkey, since turkey is in season for the fall. I'm also going to share with you the people's wine from Piemonte and reveal to you what that is. And then I'm going to reveal to you, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, with this timeless classic wine. I can't wait to share that one with you towards the end. So when you think of the fall, you think about walking through pumpkin patches, cutting oven roasted turkey, pulling checkered flannel out of your closet, things like that. Every season seems to have its style, and so does wine, actually. So keeping your wine rack delectable to your senses requires some change from time to time. Intriguing your guests with new wines requires a little bit of research. And, I would say one way to get inspired to pick new wines is during the change of seasons. So when the fall rolls around, your local cuisine will probably change, and that's the best time to switch up your wine rack. So seasonal wine pairing is a fun way to enjoy your time at the dining table with friends and family. By pairing the right wines with the foods that are fresh and in season, you can take your tasting experiences to new destinations of deliciousness. So this is a great way to select wines that you might not normally go to, which is very cool. I don't know about you, but I love to change wines frequently. It keeps my palate excited. So, what does a fall wine taste like? Well, for me, it's less about flavors and it's more about two elements of wine: body and strength. Okay? Body and alcohol. The easiest way to put together your fall wine collection is to think about not flavors, but think about body and alcohol strength. Follow my logic for a second. If winter and summer represent the most extreme seasons, coldest and hottest, then your wines should be full-bodied in the winter and light-bodied in the summer, generally speaking. The same goes for food. Fuller, heavier dishes are eaten in the winter, and lighter dishes are eaten in the summer. Since fall is in between the winter and the summer, you'll need a collection of reds, maybe some rosé, and whites that lie somewhere in the middle of those extremes. So the fall season really does give you a chance to taste and discover new wines that maybe you might not normally go to. So for fall whites, I look for wines that are around 12 to 13% alcohol. I'm looking for medium-bodied to full-bodied whites. And for the reds, I'm looking for, in terms of alcohol, anywhere from 12.5 to 13.5, maybe 14, but that's a little bit pushing it. And I'm looking for light to medium plus bodied reds. Okay, so if I find a 14%, which is a little bit out of range for the fall, I would say, not necessarily, November can be very cold. If it's 14%, I'm still going to be looking for something that's medium bodied instead of like full and robust. I don't want to go there yet. For the reds, I want to avoid those full, robust reds like Cabernets and instead go for something a little bit lighter to go with the poultry and the squash that are in season. So as we move into the cold winter season, then I'll move to the bigger reds, 14%, 15% alcohol strength. When the season changes, it's always a good time to change the wines that you've been drinking, switch it up. As summer is ending and the fall's beginning, going from hot to cool, it's time to go from light whites to medium full whites and introducing light to medium reds. So I let body and alcohol guide me to the right selections to pair with whatever foods are in season. So when the seasons change, you change your wine. For this fall, I've put together a group of wines that will pair easily with autumn dishes. I've taken all the guesswork off your table so you can just focus on putting these great wines on your table. The one thing that all the wines have in common is that they are local artisan wines from Italy. I've traveled tens of thousands of miles and spent enormous sums of money to find these wines so you don't have to drink synthetic wines made by mass producers anymore. Here's a regional map of Italy. These are the 3 regions from which the wines come from that we're going to cover today. One red will come from the north of Italy in the Piemonte region, northwest Italy. Then there's going to be a rosé coming out of Abruzzo in south central Italy. And then I've got a white and a red coming out of the Campania region in the south. So let's start with our first wine this evening. Comes from the Campania region. Now, the Campania region has a very, very long history of winemaking. It's actually a fascinating wine region for so many reasons. Culturally speaking, what I find fascinating is that while many regions in Italy sort of jumped on the bandwagon of international grape varieties like Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Pinot Grigio, the Campania region resisted all those international varieties, which are basically French varieties, and they continued to cultivate their own native grape varietals. And there are dozens of native grape varietals in Campania that have their own unique aromas, textures, and flavors that would be a pity to not experience. Also, the region historically was very famous, made famous by the Roman emperors who favored the wines of Campania more than anywhere else, which is fascinating. And what's even more fascinating is that we still have those same varieties available to us today. It's amazing what has happened to the wine world. 2,000 years ago, some of the wines were only available to the Roman emperor. Think about that, like the most powerful human being on the planet at the time. And now regular old people in the year 2020, as I'm recording this, can drink these wines. It's fascinating. So let's zoom in a little bit on where we're going first. We're going to experience our first and only white wine during the class. We're going to go to the Avellino province in the Campania region. It's about an hour and 45 minutes from the city of Naples inland. And I'll also mention for those wine geeks out there that are watching this, Campania has very, very volcanic soils, which produces, as you know, very, very fascinating wines. And so here's a picture of myself on the right, but I'm at the Antico Borgo winery, which is a micro winery in the Campania region. And the gentleman in the middle is Raffaele Inglese. He's the winemaker and owner of Antico Borgo, and this is his business partner, Baldo di Sassa. And I went to go see them recently to say hi and to taste their wines and do a little tour of the vineyards. So they produce a native white grape varietal in the Campania region called Fiano. And Fiano is actually grown throughout southern Italy for the most part. It's found in other regions. So that's why it's important that they specify here that it's Fiano di Avellino, which literally means the Fiano grape from Avellino, because some of the most complex, most sophisticated Fiano wines come from the Avellino province. So much so that the Italian government has awarded this particular wine the DOCG status, for those of you who care about that sort of thing. And what we're going to taste here is the Fiano di Avellino from the Antico Borgo estate, and they only produce 10,000 bottles a year. That's 10,000 bottles, not cases, bottles per year by hand. All the grapes are hand harvested and hand selected. Now, this wine tends to be very, very aromatic, which is what I love about it. On the nose, depending on the year, you'll get a lot of lemony notes, sometimes banana, sometimes honey, and you'll actually, what's even more fascinating is that I get sort of like a saline scent, like from the sea, which is very interesting considering the fact that the vineyards are located about an hour and 45 minutes off the coast, instead of actually being on the coast, and you still get like this breath of fresh air from the Mediterranean Sea, which is absolutely gorgeous. And so I'm calling this medium bodied, but sometimes on the finish, there's this explosion of fullness, and the finish is very, very long and persistent. And what makes Fiano such a fascinating grape varietal, I'd also mention it's probably one of the most important white grapes in all of Italy, and yet outside of Italy, it's not very popular, like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Grigio is. But Fiano is one of the few white grape varietals that has the ability to age, which is very interesting, and it's very, very rare for a white wine to be able to age. So what I find interesting about this wine is when it's released, which is about a year after the harvest, it's very very forward with fresh lemon scents and things like that. But as it begins to age by year 2, year 3, the wine starts to get more complex, and there's more fruits emerging, It gets so complex at times that it's hard to pinpoint what's really going on, except that it's delicious and there's a lot going on. So it's a very sophisticated white wine, worth exploring. So what can we pair this wine with? Well, I chose a pumpkin soup, which is, for the most part, pumpkin puree with some salt, some pepper, throw in some pumpkin seeds. It's a pretty basic recipe, but very common in the fall. And so you could also make a soup with squash and potatoes in a vegetable broth, and this wine would do very well as a pairing as well. And this wine is 13% alcohol, so medium plus bodied, 13% alcohol, and then just pairing it with a soup. You know, pick any soup, any fall soup with fall ingredients that does not have red meat in it. This wine will do very well. Maybe you want to have turkey soup with, turkey breast. This wine would also work very well with that. So it's very versatile. Just pick the body, medium plus to full bodied white, and then 13% alcohol. And that is our pairing. So now we're going to move on to another region in Italy. This is called Abruzzo. Now, Abruzzo is found in south central Italy, in this area right here. And I'm going to go back to this slide. Abruzzo is considered the greenest region in all of Europe. I mean, that's a big statement. And the reason they call it the greenest region in Europe is because there are more nationally protected parks in the Abruzzo region than anywhere else in Italy and Europe, for that matter. It's a beautiful, nature-esque region full of mountains, as you can see in this picture, and it also enjoys the Adriatic coastline as well. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to a little beachside town called Francavilla al Mare. Now, Francavilla al Mare has a long history, but its name, Francavilla, comes from ancient Roman times, because Franca means free and villa means village in Italian. And so it literally means free village at the sea, al mare. And the Romans called it that because they made this town a tax-free area. So people used to go there for vacations and they would avoid paying taxes. And people also lived there and to avoid taxes as well. I forget for how long it went on like that. If my memory is correct, it was about 12 years or so, but the name stuck forever and ever. I want to introduce to you a talented winemaker. His name is Emilio Rapino, and he's a native of Francavilla al Mare. His family has been living in this beachside territory for multiple generations, and he's not the first person in his family to be making wine, but he is the first certified enologist to be making wine in his family. And so his family is very well respected locally for making really, really good wines. But Emilio wanted to sort of take it to the next level. And so he basically partitioned off several single vineyards on his family land to produce single vineyard wines of super high quality, okay? And what I admire about Emilio is that not only does he make the wine and he's the owner of the winery, but he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. As you can see in this picture on the right, he gets out and he works in the vineyards with his bare hands every day, training the vines, getting dirt under his nails. He's a hardcore, passionate Italian winemaker, and he's got a lot of skin in the game, and I really respect what he does. His vineyards are uniquely located. As you can see here, one of his plots faces the Adriatic Sea, which not only is a beautiful, beautiful view, but it impacts the quality of the wine. It really does pick up a lot of minerality and salt from the Adriatic Sea, which is so beautiful to taste, especially in his white wines. And then on the right here, you can see facing west are the Apennine Mountains. He's uniquely located between the sea and the mountains, and that unique location under the right hands produces a unique group of wines. And so this is our daring pairing for the fall season. And I highly recommend that you try drinking a rosé with turkey. I love drinking rosé with turkey because for me, turkey is sort of a bland meat. I'm sure a lot of you would agree, and that's why there's just so many toppings available. But let's just say you don't want to deal with the toppings other than salt, pepper, maybe some herbs, and avoid the cranberry sauce and all that other crazy stuff for Thanksgiving. The rosé, especially Emilio's rosé, will definitely add a lot of color and excitement to an otherwise sort of bland turkey dinner. So I paired this rosé with a turkey breast, oven roasted with some herbs. Now, this wine type is called Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo, which literally means pink from Abruzzo. And this is the local rosé in the Abruzzo region. It's such an important rosé in the world of Italian wine that it has its own appellation. It has its own DOC status, which was recognized by the Italian government. So while rosés are made all over Italy, some of the best rosés coming out of Italy are from the Abruzzo region. The other region that I'd recommend rosés is Puglia. They also have their own appellations, a couple of them for their rosés. But Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo tends to be a medium plus bodied rosé. It's not like those Provence light-bodied, minerality-based rosés. Those I would not necessarily recommend with a turkey. They wouldn't have enough weight to balance itself with a turkey breast. This wine absolutely will. I think you'll enjoy it. Even if you're not a rosé drinker, if you're a strict red wine drinker, I want you to know something about this rosé because I'm predominantly a red wine drinker too. I'm not a big rosé fan, but what makes this wine unique is this. Have you ever heard of a wine called Montepulciano d'Abruzzo? Now, Montepulciano d'Abruzzo is probably one of the most famous and cost-efficient wines coming out of Italy. It's in every liquor store. It's in every Italian restaurant. Montepulciano d'Abruzzo is everywhere. It's a very, very famous wine. Well, Montepulciano is a grape that's grown in the Abruzzo region and makes red wine. But this rosé is made with the same grape, Montepulciano. The only difference is how long the juice stays in contact with the skin. That's it. So when you're fermenting the rosé, the skin stays in contact with the wine for about 12 hours at the most. I know that this is what Emilio does with his wine, 12 hours. Now, if he wants to make a red wine, he's gonna keep that skin contact going for probably at least 8 days, just to give you a perspective. So what this really is essentially, this rosé, it's essentially a light-bodied red wine when you think about it, because it's being made with a single red varietal that's typically made into a dry, full-bodied red wine. Okay, so for those of you who are red wine drinkers, this is definitely something you need to check out. Now we're going to go to our next Italian wine region, and that is Piemonte. Now, Piemonte is famous for many, many things. It's famous for its beautiful rolling hills, which you can see in this picture. Its borders are made of the Alps mountains, snow-covered mountains, which gives this beautiful nature-esque contrast of snow and the other lands changed by season. It's also famous for black truffles, and especially the white truffle, which is one of the world's most expensive food ingredients in the world. I believe the white truffle costs something like $6,000 a pound, which is pretty incredible. And the region is also famous for its wines. Two of its wines, Barolo and Barbaresco, are considered some of the world's greatest wines, and many of them command very, very high price points, very, very expensive wines because of their, not only their finesse and their quality and complexity, but their ability to age for decades in the bottle. And so those wines are considered noble wines. But today I want to share with you what I call the people's wine in Piemonte. So we're going to go to a little town in the Piemonte region called 𝐦𝐨𝐬𝐷. Okay, and I want to introduce to you a man named 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞 Battaglio. He is a small local artisan in the Piemonte region, and this is him with his vineyards in the backdrop. Just like Emilio, 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞 is the owner and also the winemaker, and he gets his hands dirty too, and I have a lot of respect for that. And so I want to share with you this grape varietal, which is native to Piemonte, and it's called Dolcetto. Now, Dolcetto is what I call the people's wine because, for one, it's a very cost-efficient wine. They typically drink this varietal fresh, meaning within the first 3 years after the harvest. So it's meant to be drunk young and fresh, and it pairs easily and beautifully with just about anything that you put at the dinner table. And so when you're in Piemonte and you're in a local person's house who happens to be a wine drinker, guaranteed there is Dolcetto on the table. And so this is 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞 Battaglio's Langhe Dolcetto, and it's 100% Dolcetto. It's 12.5% alcohol, 12.5%. And it's light to medium bodied, super juicy, super smooth. And he makes an extremely, extremely limited 3,000 bottles a year. 3,000 bottles. It's really like nothing. Most of the local artisans that I know, their reserves are produced at that number, 1,000 to 3,000 bottles. And this is 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞's what we call entry-level wine. This is sort of the most cost-efficient wine, shall we say. But the wine is spectacular. Only the finest grapes. I love this wine. Very aromatic, fruity, fresh, no tannins, super smooth, pairs well easily. So you almost can't make a mistake. But this is a great red wine to transition into. Let's just say like in August, you've been drinking tons of white wines because it's 100 degrees outside. This is a great red wine to switch into for September, October. And I paired it with basically a batch of roasted autumn vegetables. So you got to get your veggies in, right? So, sweet potatoes, squash, peppers, that sort of thing, greens, whatever you want to put in, whatever's in season for the fall, throw it in there, throw it in the tray, drizzle a little olive oil, some salt, some pepper, walk away for a half hour, come back, it's done. You've already got your glass of Dolcetto in, and you're swirling it and you're smelling it, and you're in paradise. You might be wondering, hey, what if I want to cook the turkey breast and the roasted vegetables? How does that work, right? Because with the turkey breast, there's the rosé, and then I'm recommending a red wine with the vegetables, which is natural to think that way. And here's what I would say. All the wines in this class are somewhat interchangeable with the dishes, which is great. So with this mixed veggie dish, You could pair the Fiano di Avellino, the white wine, with that if you want it. You can do this Dolcetto if you want, and you could even pair this with the rosé. It would all work very, very well. The one little curveball I will throw at you is the last wine, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the region of Campania. This time, we're going to go down the road a little bit to a medieval village called 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤, okay? Again, we're looking at an hour and a half, hour and 50 minutes from the great city of Naples to 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤. And in 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤, they grow the cru of the 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 grape. And I'll explain what that is in a second. But 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 was one of the favorite grapes of the Roman emperors. It's been around for thousands of years. It's been well respected since then for its complexity, for its boldness, for its ability to age decades in the bottle. And so do you remember our friend Raffaele, who made the white wine, the Fiano di Avellino? We're back at his vineyard again. This is Raffaele hugging one of the oldest vines in southern Italy. It looks like a tree trunk, but it's actually a grapevine. It's over 260 years old, and it still does produce some grapes. They don't make wine with it, but it still produces grapes, which is very, very interesting. And I just wanted to share that with you. And here we are in 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤, checking out the Antico Borgo vineyards. This is 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤. Notice here a pair of scissors, right? We do hand harvesting and hand selecting only. Even Nonna, Grandma, she participates in the harvest as well. And here's an up-close picture of an 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 cluster. Now, 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 really is, it's a very, very important varietal. It's grown all over southern Italy. But like I said, the cru of 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 is in 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤. The most complex, most age-worthy 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 wines come from 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤, which is very, very important. And 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 wines tend to be very, very bold, leathery, very earthy at times. But what I love about the Antico Borgo Irpinia 𝐼𝐴𝐽𝐤, which is the wine I'm recommending here, is that it's 13% alcohol and it's medium plus bodied, which fits our criteria. What I like about it also, just as a side note, is that it has this perfect balance of ripe fruit on the front with some sort of a savory earth tones on the back mixed in with that red fruit. So it shows off everything that 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 should show off. I have tasted over 75 producers that make 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 wines, and I can tell you some of them are just god awful. Some of them just taste like dirt and leather, and there's like nothing else going on with that. That's not cool. I don't care what anybody says, but I love how Raffaele has been able to harness the common characteristics, which are those earth tones in 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤, but also he was able to capture the beautiful fruit of 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤, which is, you know, something that only a small local artisan would be able to achieve. Okay. And so what we're going to pair with this, and by the way, this is 10,000 bottles again, very, very small production, 10,000 bottles all by hand. And this is the curveball that I was mentioning earlier. So, you know, another somewhat of a common dish in the fall is beef stew. Okay. So this makes a fantastic pairing with beef stew, because beef stew is going to need a little bit more power than, say, a light red wine. You could still get away with the Dolcetto with this, but I would say the meatier your beef stew is, the more likely 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 is your choice. So this particular pairing is less interchangeable. You also, I would not drink the rosé or the white wine with the beef stew. So you're sort of limited between the two reds. You could still do the Dolcetto, but 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐽𝐤 would be my first choice as the pairing for this. And again, 13% alcohol, which is great for the fall, light to medium plus bodied. Okay. This is not a full, robust wine, although it's got beautiful structure and balance. And of course, as it ages, it gets better and better. I also love the aromatics of this wine. And so just to recap, these are the 4 native grape varietals that we covered during this fall wine class. We just covered the 𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐞. We covered the Dolcetto from Piemonte. We covered the Fiano, the white wine from Avellino. And then our Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo, our rosé, was made with the Montepulciano grape. And so that's it. I'll just leave you with this final message, which is so important, is that Italy is the land of wine. There's more biodiversity. There's more world-class wines coming out of Italy. There's more grape varietals, more opportunities for you to discover your next favorite wine, more so than any other country in the world. The more you explore Italian wines, the more enriched you're going to feel. That's how I feel anyway. And so if you would like to get yourself some of these wines that I covered during this class, I put together a fall Italian wine collection for you. All you have to do is go to italianwines.nyc/fall, and you can get some more information over there. The wine shop ships to over 40 different states, and the states that it does not go to will be listed on the website as well. It's for 12 bottles, it's $269. That includes taxes and shipping. It's all in for 12 bottles. These are the states that they cannot ship to, which are listed right here on this page. There's about 7 or 8 of them. And again, all you have to do is go to italianwines.nyc/fall. And if you purchase this collection, I'm also going to email you a free ebook, which are the wines and some food pairings to go along with it free of charge. Again, all you have to do is go to italianwines.nyc/fall. And if you don't want 12 bottles shipped to you, there is a 6-bottle option. It sort of raises your average bottle cost a little bit because of the FedEx shipping. It's actually cheaper to ship more bottles than less bottles. But there is a 6-bottle option as well, and you still get the free ebook. So thanks for watching. I hope you have a great fall, great food and wine experiences, and I'll see you in the next wine class.